Welcome to our guide to learning how to tell which type of crab moult you can find on the Strandlines of shores covered by the North Wales Wildlife Trust. All crabs, as well as lobsters, prawns and even barnacles, have to molt their outer shell so they can grow. It's a natural part of their life cycles, and they begin doing this even when they're strange-shaped planktonic animals. Their molts can often be found washed up on shore. In this video, we're going to go through some common and some not so common crab molts that we found on various shores around North Wales. We'll show you how to identify the crab species of the molts you might find. We hope you enjoy, and please mention your new knowledge to everyone and anyone. The very first molt, and over the whole of the North Wales shores, the most commonly found is the shore crab, Cranc gwyrdd. We'll look first at the carapace, the name for the shell covering the main part of its body. The shore crab has a wider top part of its carapace close to where the eyes are than the bottom part. It tapers or gets narrower towards its tail. Looking at the top part of the carapace, you can see that it has 5 spines either side of the eyes. These are a common feature they share with some other crabs, so let's add to the features to look for. The tips of all its legs are quite pointed. The overall colour is quite green, though it can be browny or sometimes they'll go a bit orange as well. Often with this there are areas in arcs of paler spotting, and the lighter colour areas can have dark spots. You will also find molts which have turned red as the shore crab's shell has been heating up in the sunshine on the strand line. You'll find lots of different sizes too, as these crabs can molt several times a year if the conditions are good. Then we have the edible crab, Cranc gwyrdd. Its carapace is oval. People have described the carapace as looking like one of those old-fashioned pies where the baker has crimped the edge to seal it. They're always orangey red and don't change colour in the sun. This is a type of swimming crab. You can tell by the paddle-shaped rounded tip on the end of its back legs. The velvet swimming crab is an incredibly fierce crab when it's not the molts that you're finding. They have this sort of bluish colour unless they've been left out in the sun, when the colour will change to red. They also have this furry brown on their carapace, which is the velvet of their name. Spider crabs. They're seasonal molters. They come from the deep end into the shallows to mate together in early summer, and then they'll disappear out back to sea again. They're really quite striking as they're large, big crabs. They've got long legs and long thin pincers. Generally orangey and a bit stubbly looking, they have a pear-shaped carapace. But they're sometimes covered in seaweeds and other marine life, which makes these last two ID features a bit tricky to see. There are many species of large spider crabs. This picture does look a bit like Crab Armageddon, but these aren't dead. These are all molts, a sign of a healthy season. This doesn't happen every year, but when the conditions are right, you might find an amalgamation of these large molts all together on one beach. These are slightly less common molts, although on some sandy shores they can be quite common. They're called masked crabs because of the shape of a face, some say a lion's face, on their carapace. They're a rounded, oval shape and are pale orange or beige in colour. The males can have really long, slim pincers. They have antennae-type protrusions from between their eyes. These do get broken when the molt is moved around by the sea. These animals actually live buried in the sand for much of their time, and bringing their antennae together, they form a sort of siphon. This takes in water with oxygen so they can breathe while they sit under the sand. These are one of those sets of crab species that look very similar to the shore crab in terms of carapace shape and size, as well as the numbers of spines near the eyes. So, take care to check for these signs before going with an ID of shore crab. As well as the 5 spines either side of the eyes and the slightly tapering carapace, their colour is different. They have a pinky grey colour and have a marbled overall patterning rather than the pale, larger spot pattern that can be seen on a shore crab. They have the same rounded shape at the tip of their back legs. Shaped like a paddle, these are swimming crabs again. As you can see here, sometimes the back legs are a bit tricky to find. Some uncommon moults that we found, often after windy weather, have introduced us to other species living just off our shores. This is an angular crab, and it likes sand shores. It has a very square-shaped carapace and long, slim pincers, which are much larger in the males. They are orangey in colour. This is another uncommon moult. It's another one which could be one of a few species, this time of small spider crabs. They have a triangular, pear-shaped carapace and long legs and orangey in colour, but they're covered in sponges, which can be quite an extensive coverage. And this is an unusual find, not because the crabs are uncommon, but they're small and therefore their moult could be overlooked. This moult was found within the hole that a piddock had made into this ancient peat. It's a long-clawed porcelain crab moult. The carapace, legs and pincers, but not the antenna, would probably fit on a 10-pence piece. Now this isn't strictly a crab and it could be one of several different species too, but it's another one that you can find on the shore. Because this is a hermit crab moult, it's not a whole moult. Hermit crabs will tuck themselves inside shells, allowing their tail end to be protected by the mollusk shell they've chosen, instead of making a shell of their own to cover that part of the body. They therefore only molt the front part of their body, their front carapace, but also a couple of legs and pincers. The claws can differ with species, some are quite bobbly and orange, others slim and bluish. Sometimes you'll find just parts of a molt on the strand line, as the sea washes these fragile molts back and forth, breaking them up. Some legs and claws can be identified too, so we'll run through just a few of the more common ones. Edible crabs, crank goch, have really chunky claws. They're orangey red and they also have these black tips. Orangey claws with lots of bobbly bits all over it could be from one of two creatures commonly. So look at the size and chunkiness to help. Long, almost elegant claws are from one of the spider crab species we have found around our coast. If short and chunky, it could be from a hermit crab species. Both are exciting to find. Shore crab claws can look quite chunky too, but they're usually shades of green, getting lighter with spots. One volunteer likened the colour and patterning to a trout. Note, however, when left in the sun, shore crab molts can turn red, so look for the lack of chunkiness to ID the shore crab. The velvet swimming crab claw has that bluish colour with an overcoat of pale brown hair, and these have black tips. Although these can turn red in the sun, they're not as chunky as edible crabs, so you won't mistake them when seeing this black tip. An additional point here, we often get asked about these rounded, hairy orange finds on the strand line. These are the tails of a female spider crab. All of this hopefully has helped you understand a little bit more about our crabs and how they live. There are over 60 species of crabs in the UK, so there are plenty more to get to know. Or just use this knowledge to learn more about the nature on your local shore. When you're next on a beach, check that line in the sand where the tide has dropped everything it was carrying, and you are likely to find a crab molt or part of a molt. Do let people know about what you're finding. The more people talk about our sea creatures, the more chance we have of protecting them.